What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday night to you. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Deep in the Plus. I am Rob Whiteside, and I'm so happy that you're here. We are smack dab in the middle of spooky season, and we've been giving you a lot of reviews of a lot of the Disney spooky holiday season offerings that are out there, and we've got yet another one tonight. And when I thought about this movie, I thought about a friend of mine from iHeartRadio. She's got her own podcast, so I thought I'd bring her on. Please welcome Devin. How are you doing, Devin?
Hey, how's it going? Great to be here.
Man, I'm so excited to have you in here, and I know that you are a big spooky season fan, and I know that you love all things Halloween, and I know that you have blue hair. Those are the three things I know about you.
That's enough. I mean, that pretty much defines me as a person, so.
Good. So I reached out to you because I feel like we used to have these conversations. It was, what is the better Disney Halloween movie? Last week we did Hocus Pocus, but there is always a comparison between that one and the one that you and I picked out. And what movie was that?
That movie is Halloweentown.
Halloweentown. Yes. So here's the thing about Halloweentown, though, is like, I feel like when it comes to the movies, I think there is a definite winner. It's Nightmare Before Christmas. So it's not even either of these two movies for me. And so, but I know that a lot of people are very passionate about it. It's really very strange to me because these movies are just a couple, like 5 years apart. I mean, in 1993, we had Hocus Pocus. 1998, we have Halloweentown. Their only similarities are basically that they're in the 90s and that they are Halloween movies. After that, it does get a little separated, right? I mean, one was a movie theater movie. It had about a $40 million budget, and the other one was on the Disney Channel, and it had a $4 million budget.
Right. So, and the thing is that before I did some research on this movie, I didn't actually know that this was, I think, the second Disney Channel original film, that they ever had. And that's a big part of my childhood. So I didn't even realize that this was one of the films that kind of kicked that off. This would have been one of the first ones that I was watching on the Disney Channel. So it's pretty iconic in that way, and definitely would not have had the same budget as Hocus Pocus for many reasons. And we can talk about it a little later, but you can tell that it's a bit of a low budget film.
Okay. So here's the thing about it. You said the second. It was, by the numbers that I saw, and it's probably pretty close, it was the fourth. But I mean, it was near the beginning, and it was in 1998. Yeah. They had a couple. So it was Under Wraps, You Lucky Dog, Brink, and this one. I don't know any of those other movies. Do you?
Nope. I cannot say that any of those ring a bell.
So this movie was supposed to be an NBC movie. It was supposed to be a little bit scarier. It was originally pitched to NBC around the time that Hocus Pocus came out. They passed on it. Disney Channel picked it up, and originally it had like a $20 to $30 million budget. They were like, "This is great. We'll do it for $4." And so they brought it on, and they kind of gave it a little bit more of a kid spin to it. And, I've got a hot take that this movie reminds me a lot of Roger Rabbit. I'll explain. So with the fact that you've got Halloweentown, Toontown, there's something weird happening in Halloweentown, something weird happening in Toontown. You've got a Benny the Cab and a Benny the Cab driver. So I feel like there are enough comparisons to say this is exactly Roger Rabbit.
There's something about the cab itself that you are right. But when I rewatched this film, what it reminded me of was the taxi cab from Scrooged, which is not a Halloween movie, but I don't know, there was a very similar vibe there between the two, except, Benny is arguably a little bit cooler to me because he's a skeleton and his face moves really cool. And I'm pretty sure he's a robot or an animatronic or something like that. But he looks awesome. I liked him.
Yeah. at the very least, and I didn't look that up, at the very least, he was a puppet, voiced by Reno Romano, who apparently was a huge voice actor, did a lot of cartoon and anime video voiceovers. But, again, I've got a very, like, Benny the Cab, Charles Fleischer vibe off of him and what he's doing. The other thing is that when you go into Halloweentown, it's very whimsical, right? So, he's telling jokes and wisecracking, and you got, the lady who was talking about, like, I'm working down at the Headless shelter and I made these muffins and then I didn't realize they don't have mouths. Crazy. And so, like, it's all right. It's whimsical. It's a whimsical place. So again, that's my comparison between the two. But let's back up to the very beginning. There's a weird scene at the very beginning of this that has, to me, no context at all, where you see the Halloween pumpkin from Halloweentown. You don't see anything else but the pumpkin. And then the light goes out and then you go and you're on Marnie's street and seeing the trick-or-treaters. I guess this was foreshadowing of something, but I don't think I missed it. But was there a subplot about why the thing went out? I know there's weirdness happening in Halloweentown, but it was just very strange to see that at the beginning. And then we cut to, like, the neighborhood with the kids, right?
Yeah, I think I don't think watching this as a kid, I would have really read into it all that far. But I think in rewatching, my first question was, wow, everything seems a little disjointed, but I think that kind of comes along with the fast pacing of the movie it is for kids, so I get that. But when I rewatched it, I saw that scene and I thought, oh, okay, that's a foreshadowing. Surely that'll be explained later. It's not really, unless it's just supposed to be that Merlin's light is taken away. But I don't ever really feel like they go into what that's supposed to be besides just a visual cue of something's off, like something's wrong. But yeah, I mean, by the end of the film, I don't know if they wrap that up entirely, but that's a good point.
So then the next thing that we have to talk about here is that, you're introduced to mom, you're introduced to the kids, you've got a kid named Marnie. That's weird to me. The Dylan, Sophie, and Marnie, I don't know what they had against Marnie that they wanted to name her that. Is it short for something? Have I missed something? Is that short for Margaret? I don't.
I think you're 100% right. Definitely Marnie.
It's Margaret. Yeah. It's just a weird name to me. But anyway, so you've got Dylan, Marnie, and Sophie. Sophie is already kind of like telecasting that she's like, there's something, that she has a power of some sort. Somebody's coming. Something's weird. So she's got this like sixth sense. And then you meet Marnie, who is. As watching this as a parent, I get so frustrated with Marnie. This whole, like, it's not fair, you're mean. I actually wrote this one line down that Marnie says in the very beginning. She says, how are we supposed to grow up if we're not allowed to go into the world and try new things and take some risk? She's 13. Were you doing that at 13? Were you like heading out to like Amsterdam just to see what it was about, seeing the world?
Absolutely. No, yeah. I can't say that I was. I think in some ways I could relate in that when you're 13, when, you're right on the verge of that, whatever happens in your teens where you're just mad at your parents all the time. I understood that side of it, but I think her dialogue is very on the nose to kind of show that they are going to go on a journey where they all grow and get a bit more mature. But at the time I'm thinking, Marnie, you're just talking about trick-or-treating right now. Like, I don't know if going out in the world is really asking for candy down the cul-de-sac, but it's all about it's all about perspective.
Well, and here's a point that we came up with watching it too, is like they want to go out trick-or-treating because everybody's going out trick-or-treating and they want to have costumes, and mom says no to all that. Then grandma shows up and she's got a bag full of candy and costumes. So why do they even need to go trick-or-treating now? Problem solved.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's a great point. Grandma is fun. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, when we were watching it, like with the kids, they were all excited to see grandma, and my kids were like, what is it about grandma that's so exciting? It must be gifts. And I was like, I was like, how about they just love seeing their grandma? So grandma comes to town. She comes on a magic school bus. It stops at a bus stop, which is on the ground, but the bus is in the air, I guess, just to show they can. She's got a Mary Poppins bag that she brings with her. She brings it into the house. It actually finally Dylan, speaks some sense where he goes, this bag defies all logic. But no one else seems to care about the fact that she's bringing a skeleton and everything else out of this bag. They're hanging out. They're having a good time. She brings garlic out of it because it annoys the vampires. Mom and grandma apparently have some beef going back. We've already established that. Marnie has said to the mom that it's always her fault. Again, lovely child. So then they go and, they're like, oh, you know what? We're going to have dinner and we're going to bed. But, there's a moment right before then, before grandma shows up, where Sophie makes a cookie fly. And so we're starting to see that there is some actual magic here, aside from the floating bus. So it's really kind of, they're sort of easing us into that, but it's still in suburbia. And then they go to bed and they read a story about Halloweentown. And it's not Halloweentown from Jack Skellington, unfortunately, nor the Jack Skellington Sora excursion that they take in Kingdom Hearts. It's its own thing, obviously predating. No, I guess Nightmare Before Christmas was before that. I don't know. I guess it was a ripoff. Anyway, so they go and they talk about Halloweentown. They have this magic book that they open up and see all these pictures, which it doesn't seem to have many words, so I guess they don't read in Halloweentown. But they turn to this one page, and Sophie goes, "Marnie, that's you." And I keep pausing and looking at. Did that look anything like Kimberly J. Brown? The picture?
This is actually this is a great moment that you bring up, because I was watching this with my boyfriend, and as soon as that moment happens, he audibly was like, "Does it?" Because it it really just looks like an illustration of a girl with brown hair and bangs. I mean, it could be actually when I was watching through it again, I thought, oh, I wonder if that was supposed to be Sophie, because she shows, arguably a lot more powers throughout the beginning of the movie than Marnie does. And I couldn't really remember if they both had witch powers or not. So I thought, oh man, maybe that was supposed to be Sophie. So the fact that I couldn't even really distinguish between, I mean, I guess they're siblings, but you know what I mean? I was like, that could really be any girl with brown hair and bangs. But I'll give it to you.
I mean, kind of, yeah. And so the other thing about it is that you're right. Like, Sophie is starting to show powers, and it feels like maybe she is going to be the one that has them, and that Marnie's all excited, and she's like, I always have deja vu, and then I always, like weird things, and I always have deja vu, and I always, that was a joke. Anyway, I always have, I love witches and magic and all that kind of stuff. And isn't it weird that mom's never had magic in the house and blah, blah, blah. So clearly we're witches. It's my time to shine. I'm following grandma out of the house, going to learn some magic, getting my Hogwarts letter, hitting the road. So she's going, and I guess Dylan is going for giggles, just to make fun of her. And I feel like he's like baby shrunk down Rick Moranis. Like way back, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, before he got the beat down in New York. I think this feels like a little kid version of Rick Moranis. But he's got all the facts, and he's got the nerdy glasses, and he's just, and somebody, Matt in chat said he's the buzzkill. Yes, that is actually accurate. Dylan's role here is the buzzkill, but he plays it very well. Marnie's annoying, he's the buzzkill, and Sophie is haunted, I feel like.
Yeah, I would say that pretty much sums it up. I mean, somebody's got to be the straight man in the trio, Everybody else is kind of cracking jokes, doing their thing. Dylan, unfortunately, is the straight man.
Yeah, so they get on the bus, and for some reason, the bus is now on ground level when they leave, because they're able to climb into the back of it, which I feel like that's an emergency exit and things would go off, but I guess a monster bus is different than a regular bus, and no one seemed to notice. And then when they go and they're on their journey to Halloweentown and things go all Doctor Who around them, they actually scream. Nobody hears that, I guess. That's weird, right? And then they get to Halloweentown. Now, it's kind of communicated that grandma can only come during Halloween. Do we think? I don't know that they made it clear in this movie, and if they make it clear in the other movies, I apologize. But in this movie, they were talking about how they can only like travel through Halloween day. Is that? Do you think there's a reason for that? Is because they can be themselves at Halloween? Like, why is it Halloween the only time they get to travel?
Yeah, I was under the impression. See, the reason why this is so unclear is because the witch that we're introduced to looks like Debbie Reynolds. So she just looks like a fantastic grandma lady who can go and come and go as she pleases. But everybody else on the bus is wearing these masks. So, well, I mean, in the movie, obviously they're just monsters, but you know what I mean. But these monster creatures obviously can't be in and amongst the people without causing a ruckus, I would assume. So they would only be allowed to kind of move about on Halloween. But that being said, I mean, seems like not a great deal for Debbie Reynolds because, like I said, she could definitely just be out and about and nobody would know that she's a witch. I mean, at least I wouldn't, but you know.
So let's pause a second and talk about cast. And you talk about Debbie Reynolds. Debbie Reynolds they were bringing her back in to television at this point. She had done some movies. She started out in movies like Singing in the Rain. She came back into TV. She came back into movies. This was her bringing her back into TV, where she did. She was Nana Possible in the Kim Possible animated show. She did some voices for Rugrats, and then she was also in the 7D just before she passed away. When you see Debbie Reynolds, which role do you recognize her from? Is it this one or is it something else?
Yeah, it's Aggie. This was probably the first time, when I was younger. This was the first movie that I would have recognized her from. So, yeah. And it makes sense to me when I was kind of looking at the sequels. I actually haven't watched any of the Halloweentown sequels, but that, it looked like she came back for the second and the third. Not sure about the fourth, but it really wouldn't feel like those movies without her, since that's the main character that I associate with the series. So I think it makes sense that I associate her with that one.
Not Marnie? You don't associate Marnie the most with this? So, for me, I mean, Debbie Reynolds is always going to be, Carrie Fisher's like mom. That's like the thing that I know of, knew her from. So she's Princess Leia's mom. But, she did a lot of other things. Like she was on Will and Grace. Like I mentioned, Nana Possible and Kim Possible. But, to me, she will always just be Carrie Fisher's mom. And then also, obviously, the older stuff that she was in when she was younger. But, she definitely is the reason that people probably paid attention to this movie at first, because she was really the only star in this movie. Then you have Marnie, played by Kimberly J. Brown, for the first three movies. She did not come back as Marnie in the last movie, Return to Halloweentown. And it's like, it seems like it's people are unsure why. Sarah Paxton played Marnie in the fourth movie, but even Kimberly J. Brown was like, I don't know why I wasn't back. I enjoyed playing the character Marnie. So, hashtag not my Marnie, I guess, in the other movies. Gwen, who is the mom, and their last name is Piper, but they're all Cromwell witches, I guess. Was played by Judith Hogue, who played bit parts in different things, but she was in Nashville. Dylan was Joey Zimmerman, Sophie, Emily. Like, I'm reading these off, but I don't know who these people are because I don't think they really did much outside of these movies. Unless you have a favorite.
No, not that I've seen. There wasn't a single. I think that not no to the favorites. If I had to pick a favorite character from this movie, watching it back, it's actually probably Dylan, but just not because, I mean, he is a buzzkill, but he's just so funny watching it back now. I think as a kid, there's no way that I would have liked that character, because I definitely would have thought, oh, yeah, he's just being a little brother. And when you have siblings, especially like I do, you think, yeah, my siblings are the worst because that's just how it is. But watching it back now, I kept thinking, man, I know so many people who are like this, but in a funny way. So I think by the end of the movie, I almost thought that I knew him from something else, and I think that was just real life. Like I think I just know these people in real life, but I don't think I've ever seen him in a different movie.
Well, when it with Sophie, she looks to me just like the little girl who played in Matilda and Mrs. Doubtfire, and so like that, she's got that same vibe, and it was the same around that same time. So maybe this was just their way to get a cheap version of that of Mara Wilson. But she just there was a whole bunch of times where I'm looking at her, I'm like, oh, nope, still Mara Wilson. I'm thinking of, it's not her. So then, they're in Halloweentown. They've stowed away on the bus. They get to Halloweentown. They're looking around. They don't seem too freaked out about the fact that there are all these monsters and things walking around. They seem to be quite at home there, which I guess you could say that's in their DNA. And so then they are looking around. They see that Sophie has made her way to Halloweentown too, which again seems very unlikely that they wouldn't have seen her coming in or sitting next to them, sneaking into the bus or any of that kind of stuff. But we'll go with it. So then they get in there and they meet the mayor, who is Dime Store Willy Wonka, I feel like.
Oh, absolutely. No? Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think from the moment he shows up, I just immediately don't trust that guy. Not that I distrusted Willy Wonka when I first saw him, but he's a little interesting of a character too if you watch those movies when you're younger. And I think this guy, I mean, come on, the first thing he does is pull a lollipop out of his ear, I think, and offers it up. And probably the most realistic thing to happen up until that point is Sophie saying, yeah, I'm good, I don't think I need that. And I'm just like, there you go. Maybe don't take ear candy.
I was gonna say, is it because it came from his ear, or is it because it's coming from a stranger? Is it both? I mean,
I gotta say, it doesn't make it better that it's the ear. I'll say that. But stranger, yeah, absolutely not. But stranger ear, no.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the same suit. I feel like he's got the cane. He is basically, and he's a little bit weird, and he's calling her Soapy, but clearly he knows her name is Sophie. And, oh, I can't hear you, I got this in my ear. And he's got candy. He's Willy Wonka is basically what he is. But when, I don't know if it was right then or if it was somewhere like the first time we meet him, but I'm like, oh no, he's definitely the bad guy. I mean, it feels like it was pretty much like there wasn't a huge reveal at the end, even though he kind of had this like Emperor Palpatine face for a while. There was no reveal, I don't think, necessary to that. It's like, okay, no, he's the guy, especially when there's a scene where he's like, oh, I have to take care of something. And then he disappears. And then he, the evil guy, shows up in the movie theater. And it's just like, okay, well, clearly this is the mayor, and he's the one that's up to, solemnly swears he is up to no good. So then he, he finds out that, oh, you're Gwen's kids, like clearly he had a thing for Gwen. He's like, oh, you know what? I'll help you get to your grandmother's house. He calls Benny. Here comes Benny, throws him in a cab with a strange skeleton and sends them on their way. And again, stranger danger, not a thing in Halloweentown. So they get out to her house, and there's a lot of funny little things about, like, she's making stuff, but she's using an instant witch's brew instead of the real thing. And she hits, bubble, boil in trouble on the microwave, and, little things like that that are funny. And then the kids show up, and she's like, oh, well, you know what? I'm sure your mom is scared that you're not home, but time's different there. So why don't you stick around and help me fight evil, while you're here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, the her description of how time worked was just so, it was just very, let me explain this away real quick. Because she was like, oh, 2 hours in the real world is like 2 days here, 2 weeks if you're on vacation. And I was like, wait a minute, what does that mean though? How much time do we have? Someone tell me.
Explain to me the rules. Exactly.
Yeah.
So then she's like, weird things are happening, strange things are afoot at the Circle K. Let's go and into town and figure out what's happening. And then she buys Marnie a wizard's broom, and then they like happen upon the movie theater, et cetera, et cetera. Then she goes and she has to talk to the mayor and tell him what's going on. Which again, I'm like, don't tell him this because he's the bad guy. She runs into her friend that's like changed somehow, and that's another thing too, is her friend was changed somehow, but like the whole gist of it was people were getting frozen and stuck in the movie theater, right? Like, was there a second spell that was happening to them?
Rob, I think you're thinking about this way too hard. The suspension of disbelief has got to be up here. Like you're really, you're really trying to
I
pick
want
this apart.
answers. I want answers. I mean, you're not wrong. That's why we call it Deep in the Plus, is we're going just way deeper than we possibly should have for this. But you know what? I honestly think that this is one of those movies where, like, if you grew up with it, you love it. But if you didn't, it's an interesting like choice. Again, it doesn't have the high budget. Some of the creature effects are very low budget, like a mask probably. Some prosthetics. There's not a lot going on. Obviously, they didn't have some CGI budget. Like I said, it was only a $4 million budget. But it's an interesting movie. And one of the things that I'm afraid of while I'm watching this is that the resolution, there's not enough time to come out with a strong resolution. It's an hour and 24 minutes, and we spent at least 24 minutes in Gwen's house trying to argue whether they should be, witches or not. So I feel like, there it could have been a longer movie, with maybe a little bit more to the resolution so that there was really more of a final conflict. They get into the movie theater. Gwen has come to town because she's going to get her kids back. So she goes to, find the mom. They go down to the movie theater to do this spell. The villain shows up and he freezes the mom and the grandmother, but the kids get away, and then they've got to figure out a way on their own to save Halloweentown and save grandma and mom. So they go off to do that. Practicing their spells, all that kind of stuff. Sophie has some kind of great memory to do things. And it's still at this point, I'm not sure yet whether Marnie has actually got powers at this point, because we still haven't seen anything from her, whereas Sophie has shown all these signs of something, that she's got greatness in her or whatever. So I mean, again, it seems like the resolution happens too quickly. They obviously have to go and get the ingredients they need to make the spell. And the scene with the ghost in the steam room, how do you feel about that one?
I, I gotta say, so here's the thing. I do agree with you that I definitely thought the journey to make that spell or potion from scratch was going to be the bulk of the film, because it would be the kids bonding and, finding out more about Halloweentown and figuring out how to solve this problem. And it all happens very quick. When we get to the ghost scene, I feel like that steamer is just a fever dream somebody had, because that is just not a thing that exists, I don't think. And the fact that it happens to a ghost, the ghost sweat idea, when Dylan is like, you realize, they're dead, they don't have a body, why sweat? And I keep thinking Dylan is my inner dialogue happening within the film. Because these were the same questions I was asking. But as soon as Sophie puts that sheet or that towel over her head and starts wooing around, I immediately was like, oh no, and was like offended for the ghost before the ghost was. So I actually did think that was a really funny moment in the film for them to be like, let's throw some ghost stereotypes at the ghost real quick. But it's very funny. It is a good moment, that and the werewolf hairdresser. It's fun to see the kids work together. And it's really fun to actually see them, achieving something, I guess, because everything that they do in the beginning is just kind of things that happen to them, but they're making this part of the film happen so that they can solve it. So I do agree. I wish that there was a little bit more of that, because I felt like that was the meat of the film. That's what I really wanted to see.
Yeah, it's I agree with that. And like I said, the resolution happens almost too quickly. That it's this build up is happening, and then that just all of a sudden at some point they were like, oh, wait a minute, we got to finish this thing up. You go get the ingredients, we'll go get the wand, we'll light it up. Marnie will almost make it to the pumpkin, and then in some just like, just her hero's arc, she is able to release the torch. It falls into the pumpkin, and then we feel like everyone's saved, but yet there's this one final showdown with the villain, and it's going to take all the Cromwells together, because now Dylan's got powers, but he still doesn't believe it. Come on, Dylan, be a part of it.
Yeah, I was like, man, Dylan, look, I've been on your side the whole time, buddy. Hey, but now you've got, twinkling fingies. And
Yeah,
that's a technical term, but yeah,
no, it is.
you've got powers. And I just, I keep thinking like it was weird at that point in the film for him to just cross his arms and not like, he's like, I'm not holding hands and solving this movie's going to keep going. And I'm just like, no, Dylan, we've reached the end. Like, go ahead and be a part of this, because they've already all bonded, so I pretty much did expect him at that point to be on board with everything. But I think that was like one last dig to make sure you knew that Dylan's just not fun. He's not fun.
Yeah, because again, like Matt said earlier, he's a buzzkill. So I was asking Lauren in chat. She said that she grew up with this and said that she was in 8th grade, and that she was a year older than Kimberly J. Brown, who played Marnie. So that probably is cool if you're that age and thinking, okay, this is me. I'm the one who is mom's holding me back, and fight the power, and I want to go and and go off to some like magical place and find out that that I have these these witch powers and this legacy and this history. So I could see that there probably is something very cool about this, and I do get that this was made for children, this movie, and my kids loved this movie growing up. I don't know how I missed it, because my wife has seen it like a gajillion times, and I had not seen it because she watched it with them. When I asked my son, like, what do you remember about this, he was like, the skeleton driving the cab. Like, that was his like takeaway from it, was Benny. So I do get that it is a movie more geared toward kids, but and it is a little bit more family friendly. There's not a lot of in Hocus Pocus, there's a lot of things that happen, like the cat gets run over by a bus. We talked about that. There's a lot more, like they keep talking about, we need a virgin to light this candle, which you go and see that with the family, and then the kid turns to you and goes, can you explain that part to me? No, I can't explain that part to you. I don't know why they put that in there. So this one is really, again, it was Disney Channel in the early days, as you said. It's more geared toward kids. So it is really more kind of like a fun, family-friendly romp. But I do think that there is something to be said about seeing it as a kid, and then you lived that one. You wanted to watch it every Halloween, and then it comes to Disney Plus, and now you can watch it over and over again. For you, this was the first time you said that you've seen it since you were 5?
Yeah, so this movie came out when I was 5 years old. So as far as I remember, it was the first Disney Channel movie that I had really seen. And at the time, like I said, I think it becomes a staple when you have that nostalgia wrapped up in it. I think watching it as a kid, I'm not really asking any of these bigger questions, or, really analyzing all the things that are pretty much wrong with the movie, or things that are drawbacks. But you watch it a few times when you're a kid, and you think, wow, this is what Halloween is to me. It's trick-or-treating, and it's people in masks and funny skeletons driving taxi cabs, and there aren't really any stakes. When you're a kid at Halloween is more fun. You're not really watching any hard-hitting horror films or anything. So it's not really all that scary. And I think this movie reflects that. Even at the end, I didn't really feel like we were ever in danger, I guess. And I think being a kid-friendly type of Halloween film, I mean, that is what the season feels like when you're that age, you know?
Yeah, no, I get that. You know, I feel like like I've said this a couple of times, that the resolution happened very quickly, that they are able to, you know, hold hands, form their powers, and beat Calabar, and you know, make him go away, and then you know, it's all over. You know, mom says, hey, you know, why don't you come stay with us, grandma? You know, we're all a big happy family again. It's tied up with a nice little bow, and you know, then that's the end of the movie. It's great. Everybody goes off happy, but then you get this cue, like this warning in your queue that's like, okay, you ready for Halloweentown 2, Calabar's Revenge? And it's like, well, great. We thought we had taken care of all this, and now here you're telling me he's coming back. You know, that movie actually came out. Halloweentown was 1998. Calabar's Revenge was 2001. So clearly there was a lot of like desire for it. When they reached Halloweentown in 2004, it felt like the production value was a little bit higher at that point. And so, you know, I feel like that as this series grew, that more grew, like, you know, like they maybe threw a little bit more money at it. Obviously, they liked it as an IP to continue. And then Return to Halloweentown happened in 2006. So this is the part that I think is interesting, is that people who watch this in 1998, and let's say if you watched it then and you were, say, 8 years old, you were 16 by the time that the last movie came out. Is that still something you would want to see at 16? I mean, you know, as a 16-year-old girl, which I'm sure you've been, tell me, is that something that you would have done at 16?
No, I mean, I think there's a reason why watching it as a kid makes sense. And I think just as I grew up, I think I missed the boat a little bit. Because like I said, I've never even seen the Halloweentown sequels. I didn't even know that there were multiple. I knew that there was a Halloweentown 2. But after that, I kept thinking, all right, let me add up how old I would have been and if this would have even been something, you know, that was on my radar at the time. And I just don't think it was. So I don't know. It can happen with sequels sometimes where it's definitely made for a particular audience and that audience might have aged out a little bit. And I think that is probably something that happened for me as well. But
yeah, and two of the stars of the Disney Channel High School Musical, before it, where there was a High School Musical, Ryan and Kelsey were in this Halloweentown High. So again, it was starting to become a bigger franchise. They were moving in more directions with it. Yet it's one of those things that I've never seen merchandise from. Like Hocus Pocus, you see merchandise in the theme parks, at the Disney store. I don't think I've ever seen any Halloweentown merchandise where it's a movie franchise that they had 4 movies. I mean, that seems like something that clearly there is an audience for this. Clearly, a lot of people list this as one of their favorite Halloween movies. You would think that they would cater to that group. And then on top of that, there's the whole thing about, like, to my knowledge, there are no theme park tie-ins. So, you know, this was in a bottle. This whole thing, just a Disney Channel thing. You know, I feel like Descendants, you know, poured over, High School Musical poured over, and yet this one, you know, basically its place is on, well, in our hearts, of course, but also on Disney Channel and now Disney Plus. So, you know, when I watch this and I look at that, I think this is like ripe for a reboot, don't you think? I mean, especially with Disney Plus being able to create new shows, don't you think it's time for Halloweentown 5?
you know, I love a good reboot. But I mean, it's Debbie Reynolds though. If like I don't know. If she can't be a part of it, then it's like, would I even, I don't know. It's her, Rob. Like, she's the whole thing that I remember. I mean, Benny the taxi driver is great too, but I'm just like, it's her for me with the series. So I don't know if I would, like, even me personally that really enjoyed the first movie, I don't know if I would hop on the Halloweentown 5 train. I don't know. But
Okay, that's fair.
I guarantee that there would definitely be an audience for it. I do agree with that.
Bring back the original Marnie. That it'll be like the search for Marnie is like the, you know, we find out that the Return to Halloweentown was a sham. that like that wasn't that there was some spell that the original Marnie was taken away and replaced with this other Marnie, and everybody bought into it. But now it's like, so you have Sarah Paxton and Kimberly J. Brown in the same movie. I feel like that's what it needs to be. But I agree with you. I mean, Debbie Reynolds was kind of the glue that held this one together, and this is like kind of why people went to see that one. I was talking with our friend from Disneyland, Katie, who would say that Mr. Boogedy is her favorite. I don't know if you've ever seen Mr. Boogedy, but I watched that and I was like, why is this your favorite movie? And there's a lot of movies like that for me too, especially when you have the chance again to see them on Disney Plus and you go, this isn't quite what I remember. Some people were saying Halloweentown 2 was a better movie. I like Apple Dumpling Gang and the second Apple Dumpling Gang. The second one was a better movie. It's the one I remember. The first one was okay. So I really think that it's neat to go back through and watch these movies, but obviously you can't start on Halloweentown 2. You got to start with 1. Otherwise you don't know what Calabar is revenging, right? I mean, you don't know.
Exactly.
So with all that we've said about this movie, I have to ask you one important question. You got to talk to the people now, Devin. Would you recommend this movie? Go.
I would, but I'm going to add just a little snippet here. I would recommend it, but only if you can watch it and just have fun. It's definitely not a film, especially if you have no nostalgia tied to it. If you didn't watch it when you were younger, I think that there are going to be a lot of loose ends. There are going to be a lot of things that you're going to question. But I think that if you can step back from all that and just watch it as being, this love letter to the holiday. It's nostalgia, it's Halloween, and it's fun. It's just a fun time. So if you can do that, then yeah, I would say go ahead and watch it. It's an October classic. Would definitely recommend.
October classic. I like that. I would like to make a plea that there are 87 people watching. If y'all could hit like, I would really appreciate it. We would really appreciate it. Show Devin some love and hit the like button for us so that more people can find this too. Let me just say, for me, there's a lot of times, and I've given this spiel so many times that a lot of people who watch the show a lot would understand, that there are some movies I would say, if you're a Disney fan, you need to watch this. This isn't one of those, though. I think this is one where, to your point, it's like it's just a family fun movie, and I think it would be great, especially in this world that we're in, where we're shut in and we're running out of content because they're not making new TV shows, and the ones that they make are like stuff that they dug up out of the bottom of the barrel, like at the rental bin at a Blockbuster, and so. We're really running low on content. I think it's a neat thing, to have a quarantine weekend with the family and just watch them all. I mean, watch all of these movies and then, kind of make it a tradition. If you have older kids, it could certainly be sort of an MST3K experience where you kind of like, do like we've been doing and kind of like talk a little bit of junk about it. But I do think that for just a family movie, it's a little bit slow. I think it is a little bit in a, like kind of a time capsule of like, the day, because I think there's a lot of things and subjects around like the fights at home and the TV commercials and all that kind of stuff that feel very like mid 90s, late 90s. But I do think that if, it would be fun to just sit down and watch them all. We've done that with the Santa Claus movies on Christmas. We watch all of them in a row. There are some movies though that like, where we go, do we really want to go back to the first one? I feel like you got to start with it. To really understand Marnie's origins, you really have to go back to the beginning and watch this one. So I would recommend it as well. I will also tell you this story that I was in DC at the ICE show, which if you've never seen it is pretty cool. And they at the Gaylord Hotel in DC at National Harbor, they do this show where they do a lot of ice carvings. It's usually themed around something. I think the one we saw was themed around Frosty the Snowman. Huge tents, they give you a parka, you go in, they have like, it's just really neat to see. And we're walking out and my sister goes to my niece and says, hey, isn't that Marnie? And we look over and Kimberly J. Brown is there, taking off her parka, having experienced ice at the same time we did. And so she went over and had a picture taken with her and, she was really cool about it. And that was neat. And then we looked at my daughter and said, do you want one? She's like, no, I'm good. We're fine. I'll just admire her from afar, but it was really neat. She was super nice. I think these days, Kimberly J. Brown, I think she has an Etsy store where she's selling some, kind of throwback Halloweentown stuff. So you can look that up. But, I really think it would be neat to bring them all together for one more, and maybe even if to pay homage to Debbie Reynolds. So if you agree, disagree, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you are a WIGS member, thank you guys so much for being WIGS members. WIGS is our Patreon program. If you need more information on that, check it out at patreon.com/WDWNT. You get lots of great post shows, lots of extra podcasts, including Detailed, the new Tom Corliss walks you around and tells you all the cool things about stuff like the Skipper Canteen. So if you haven't seen it yet, become a WIGS member, check it out. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Next week, we will be back with my favorite, A Nightmare Before Christmas. And Katie will be doing that one with us. So I cannot wait for you guys to join us with that. Devin, thank you for being here. And y'all have a great night.